Welcome in, Believe in Commanders podcast. Scott Jackson and Anthony Armstrong back together again, part of the Believe Network, and we are brought to you by FanDuel. Good to be back stateside, Anthony. Good to be with you. And it was a nice 10 days away over across the pond in the UK. Did see a lot of soccer, although they call it football, of course, and you don't say soccer over there. But I'm back here stateside, so I can say it that way. But actually went to a Premier League game, went and saw Fulham play Burnley. Fulham is mid-ish right now in the Premier League, where Burnley is going to be one of these teams that gets relegated. It looks like they're going to be relegated. Yeah, which is a big thing.
That's going down. You don't want.
Yeah, that's going down. That's not good. You don't want to go there. But it was a great game. It's a very historic, fantastic stadium, Craven Cottage, and had a lot of fun doing that among the many other things I did. But that was certainly a highlight the first weekend I was there. So, but it's good to be back with you, and a lot of Commanders NFL news going on with the NFL owners meetings in progress in Phoenix.
Yeah, there is a lot happening. Glad to have you back on this side of things. You didn't go and see any former team owners or anything while you're over there. Just check in when you come to your residence or whatnot. But no. It's been a kind of a busy weekend, at least on my end. And now all the owners and the coaches are out there in Phoenix talking turkey. Hell, one thing I forgot to mention in our little pre-talk, what we're going to talk about. The Browns wanted to propose trades to be 5 years out.
Right. Like the NBA, right? Like just like one of these NBA future.
They were going to tank forever. That's all I figured, man. I'm like, you got to be willing to tank forever. Like, they really don't care to do anything. No. Sean McVay shot that thing down, but I'm glad that one got shot down. I don't like the trades. Like, you're trading people that are in high school at this point. You know what I'm saying? Right. You're like, this kid ain't even.
Well, and you burn like future GMs and future coaches in a sense when you go about that route. But again, I don't know. I would have been interested to be able to do it. It would have opened some things up, maybe some trade possibilities. But the league is so like win now. It doesn't really line up with what the NFL is supposed to be about compared to, say, the NBA, in a way teams have kind of set things up, and baseball has been doing this as well, with these long-term tanks for some teams. In some cases, it works great. If you're the Houston Astros, they came out bigger, better than ever. The Orioles, to some degree, have gotten there, but not quite there. The 76ers, we're still waiting to see if it really pays off. But if nothing else, they have been relevant since their trust the process time. So anyway,
I don't like it for football. I don't like it for football. The reason why, it's too damn physical. There's too much on the line for you to be sitting here saying, we're going to trade our next 5 years worth of picks. The Rams are the ones that say F these picks. And he was like, they're going to shoot that thing down. But
usually,
I figure, hey, I can't, with as physical as the game is, it's not fair to have like a vet or somebody that's just been in the league for a long time and just be stuck on a team that's just chosen to be no good for a while. But the good thing, Scott, is that our Commanders have not decided to be one of those teams. They don't want to be sorry.
No.
They want to be good. They want to get back on the winning side of things. Josh Harris said that down at the owners' meetings. Said obviously last year was not what anybody wanted. Injuries, losses, but now they're trying to get on the right side of things. And he said, there's a little bit of a clock ticking, but they are all solidly behind AP and DQ. What did you think about some of the messages and the words that they spoke out there, Josh Harris specifically?
Well, sometimes I have to remind myself when Josh Harris speaks. He doesn't do it often, but it's like once or twice a year, which, number one, I appreciate. But I'd remind myself, we previously lived with a owner here for 20-plus years that after, year 4 or 5, just stop talking, like literally to stop talking. And then occasionally we get in front of a microphone and say things like Happy Thanksgiving in January. Anyway, so I do appreciate him coming out, and I know for some fans they're probably not going to be tough enough words. He should have held Quinn and Peters to the fire or whatever. But look, I think he said the stuff that needed to be said. Of course he believes in them. He brought him back. He brought him back next year. I mean, it follows his actions. And really, look, year one was a gift from the football gods, right? I mean, the way that worked out with this regime having that type of run. Last year was probably a bit of a reality check. The injuries obviously were a huge part of it too. And I wasn't one of these people that was out here saying you need to fire everybody, but certainly they needed to change approaches, and it looks like they have. We'll see how these changes in the staff work because, again, 2 unknowns. But, in terms of what Adam Peters has done in this offseason, fans who wanted more aggression and filling holes, more at a higher level in terms of money. I think, they've gone out and done a nice job with that. And they've also picked up some bargain guys too throughout the process. So I can understand why Josh Harris is supportive of these guys and why he believes in them. But, they're still going to have to go out and obviously deliver the goods this season, Anthony, or then, all things, just as they say in this business, are subject to change quickly.
Subject to change is correct. I agree with what he's saying. And Josh Harris, what's been happening in the offseason has been pretty solid. A couple of misses early, maybe, in the free agency side of things, but there are a couple of holes that are out there. Obviously, the receiver spot is a big hole. The center position is a big hole. Two things that came up in those interviews. They said DQ was talking about the receiver position, and it could be a collaborative effort, right? It's more of the group is more important than the one. Yep. I'm using all different words in what he said, but I don't really like that. That didn't sit too well with me, and it left me just kind of like a damn. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like it was almost like it was Alec Pierce or nothing, and we've gotten left with the nothing. No disrespect to the folks that have been brought in, but they had to pivot and go bring in a couple of deep route specialists, if you will, with Van Jefferson and De'Ami Brown. So like, okay, we're going to go for the guy who could get down the field. Didn't get him. Now what? It's a long way before you get anything happening in San Francisco. He's not getting released at any time. Ayuk is not getting released anytime soon. They were trying to get a trade partner for it. It ain't happening. So now they're kind of left to rely on the coordinator to create the separation and to get people open. And, I can appreciate DQ for explaining his process and thinking process of how they're going to try to figure out what's going to be the best lineup of receivers come training camp. He's like, hey, everybody run the same route, and then we'll just teach it fundamentally, and then we'll see who does it better from there. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Definitely leaves a lot of question marks. And it just also lets me know week one, you're going to see single high safety, and they're going to challenge whoever's at receiver 2. And we're going to need somebody to get open. But I do have a secret person, I think, who could really be the secret weapon for this offense, and it may be Chig Okonkwo. I think that could be the guy, Scott.
Well, he could be. I think he's going to be a big part of it. But remember, they do have this little thing called the draft, Anthony, in less than a month, where you could get a receiver 2 there, especially in the first round. So I think that's an interesting option here still. And look, you don't know what's going to happen yet. I mean, there are still some guys hanging out there that maybe have overpriced themselves. Juwan Jennings, for example, that could end up here still, unless he got signed when I was away. Did he get signed when I was gone? Did I miss something?
No, I think he's still on top of the list of most best available free agents.
Okay. Well, and then of course, look, they tried to get Dobbs. That didn't work out. He got paid really well by the New England Patriots. I think they're going to figure it out there. Either Ayuk on a cheap deal when he becomes available, or it's going to be perhaps Carnell Tate, or maybe you move back and look at one of the other receivers down the list if you move back in that first round, if you have the opportunity to do it. Or again, like you said, it could be by committee. I mean, you look at think of these teams that have overspent on like number 1, number 2 receivers. There is not a long list of them that end up being Super Bowl champions. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, the Chiefs have even done this thing a little bit more conservatively and grading. Say, well, they have Patrick Mahomes. But when you have like a franchise level quarterback, this is what you're supposed to do, right? Like the quarterback's supposed to be the one that rises the tides for the players. Remember when this team made the run in the NFC Championship a few years ago, who was the number 2 receiver that year? I mean, who really was it? It was Terry, and it was Brown. Sometimes it was OZ. Hell, Jamison Crowder at times. I mean, there were a lot of, Ertz was obviously a big part of it. Eckler coming out of the backfield could be, helpful too. But I mean, it wasn't like they had a clear number 2 back then either, when they were playing some of their best ball. And look, the Eagles are probably the only team I can think of here in the recent history that have spent large at that position on 2 guys and it's counted for. Like they've actually won championships with. A Super Bowl, that is. Yeah,
that is an interesting thing to think about. You always see the list of the top duos in the league, in Cincinnati and LA and some of them are like a really good one, like Seattle's like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Cooper Kupp. He's no slouch,
stud,
but he's not having to do the same stuff he did in the past, right? So seeing those duos, it makes you wonder, like, is this going to be what helps get you to a championship and win some things? But you know what? It just makes it an interesting part of this pie. how it's going to play out in the offseason. It's going to be a test for the coaches, right? How
Sure.
are you able to create something different and new to get your people open? When you look at the Ben Johnson system, like the year prior, whenever Jameson Williams was standing stationary, he wasn't as effective.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to get pressed. He was able to get redirected.
Right.
But when they got him in motion and they got him moving and had a lot of cross releases, it took away a lot of the press and the physicality part of the game, and it let him use his speed, which is his strong suit.
Well, look at what Ben Johnson just did. He ran off one of his top receivers, right? And DJ Moore traded him away this offseason and leaves him with Roma Dunze. Now we'll see what they do in the draft. And obviously they're very high on, some of the young guys they have, coming off last season. But you're right. I think there's some coordinators, Ben Johnson being one of them. Sean McVay, look, they've always had a number one guy, but their twos have been some older experienced guys. Before it was Kupp, right, and then he kind of started going the other way. And Puka Nacua, the youngster, came along to become the number one guy, and now they've of course got Devontae Adams there, who fitted really nicely last year. You look at Green Bay's been receiver for committee forever, right? I mean, Green Bay, that's kind of the way they've rolled with their offense. The 49ers have had more problems since they started paying the receivers than they did when they weren't paying them, right? Whether it was Debo fighting for his money, or then when they paid Ayuk and the mess that's become. So, and these are all very successful passing offenses we're talking about. So I don't think it's an end all be all if you don't get Brandon Ayuk or get whoever, Jawan Jennings, whoever make some trade for somebody who's desperate for, to get out of town or something. I think you could go in there with a maybe a younger group and kind of see it develop next season. After.
And Scott, since the Commanders have an opening at the receiver position, they could use one of our sponsors. They could use ZipRecruiter to potentially fill that spot, right? So regardless who makes it to the final round, one thing that's for certain, it's going to take the most talented people to build these incredible teams. The same thing goes down when you're hiring. And if you want your business to be at the top of its game, you need to be employing the best people on your team, Scott. You can't have any slouches. You got to get the best folks available. And where are you going to find those folks? At ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio to customize your spot. Pick two. Oh, never mind. ZipRecruiter smart matching technology. It immediately finds qualified candidates, and it checks all your boxes. I'm supposed to pick two of those. You know what I mean? ZipRecruiter is also going to recommend screening questions, so you can easily add to get the highest quality candidates. Make sure you ask the right questions so you can get the right answers, get the right people. You want to know who's recently active, Scott?
Who's that?
ZipRecruiter's filters, they can show you who's active. Just click that thing. It'll show you who's actively looking. And you can score the best for your team with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Appreciate ZipRecruiter for jumping in and being a sponsor of the show, holding it down for us. But there's still holes too. They can also find a center on ZipRecruiter. They'll be available.
That's true. What did you think of that?
Well, what I think.
What did you think of that? They kind of talked around it. Yeah, they talked around it. What did you think of that? So I think that tells me more about what they thought of the play of the player, right? Like, I don't think you're going to come out publicly and bash Tyler Biadasz, right? Publicly. Yeah. But just the way they talked about it the last couple, the other day, I should say, at this point, it makes it seem like that was more about a performance issue and money, right? Money in for the price that they were paying. They just thought they weren't getting that kind of play out of him. And that's why they moved on. And that's why they moved on ultimately. Yeah,
but I still would have felt that you would have at least went out there and tried to get a trade partner, right? You try to grab yourself, anybody, a draft pick or two. I mean, you're sitting there with just 6 going into the end of this draft, less than a month away. And the guy you let go gets picked up in a flash, quick, fast. And that's just kind of let you know, you'd be like, man, maybe I'd left some money on the table. You know what I mean? I left something out there, even if you felt like you wanted to move on from the player. Like,
or you thought the trades, like the trade value that you were getting back was not as good. Is remember, because they do the trade, there's a difference in the money, right? Like in terms of the dead money that they're taking on the Commanders I'm talking about. And they hit it in what it does to your cap. So maybe that was why they were like, you know what, just the clean break. The money's more valuable than, I don't know, a conditional day 3 or whatever it would have been, day 6th or 7th rounder. I don't know, or they just or they blew it. I don't know, or they blew it. I mean, or they blew it, or they blew it. And they didn't know the Chargers were serious about it. We're serious about making this move.
It very well could be just a little egg on your face that you mean you just kind of like we should have made this play and we didn't, but now all you can do is just hey, you got to wash your hands of it and keep moving forward. They got to make a solid selection, but it lets you know even more. You really better have a good plan at center. You really got to have a plan there. I can deal with the group of receivers and pass catchers and the guy in the backfield and that's Jayden and whomever the running back is, Bill or Love or Rashad White, whomever. I can get behind that being your collective passing game. I can get behind that. You can sell me that. But you can't tell me it's going to be a collective effort to fix center. All right? You can't tell me that. So we're going to see where that rolls, man. We're going to see where that rolls.
Yeah, I mean, either Algrady starting or they draft somebody who, is really good quickly. And they get in there as well. And that's what it's going to boil down to. Unless, of course, somebody becomes available, another veteran between now and that time, which, at this point, probably not. Most teams would like to be settled, I think, at that position. But again, weirder things have happened. This is the NFL. It is a Believe in Commanders podcast brought to you by FanDuel. And we are, of course, always encourage you to like, follow, comment, and subscribe to our podcast here. That is always very helpful and beneficial to us. We appreciate it if you could do that. All right, let's move on to some other things, including Adam Peters being asked about, number 7 and whether or not running back would be something that he would be okay with at the 7th spot overall. And, of course, he gave a very general manager's answer, Anthony, which was, like anything that can help the football team, right, is going to be in play there. He's not one of these guys that's caught up, or at least not going to tell you that he's caught up in the value or the devaluing of the running back position. Of course, he was in San Francisco where they spent some money to acquire a guy in some draft capital by the name of Christian McCaffrey. So he has seen it, go very well. Then on the other side, here's a guy who took a running back in round 7 last year that played pretty well in Bill Krosky-Merritt, which he did bring up, by the way, when he talked about the running back position. But he goes, I wouldn't have any trepidation about taking anyone at 7 that I think can really help our team, that we would be really help our team. He goes, but, also we got Bill in the 7th round last year. So you can get the running backs at a lot of different ways. But certainly if we think any running back or any really position, no matter what it is, if it's a guy, that there are premium positions, as people would say, there's positions that are maybe less premium depending on who you ask. But if there's a person that can help us impact our team in a certain way, then you would take them, regardless of their position. So that's a very Adam Peters answer, right? Good. He doesn't tell you much, but he says a lot.
I was just about to say, he said a whole lot of something, but then
a lot of words, but didn't really give you any details as to what he's going to take. Good players. There's a great idea. A good player at number 7. I think people would hope a great player at number 7. But that'd be a nice idea. I like that idea.
Facts. I remember growing up, we would go down to Jasper, Texas. I'd go see my granny, and she had a neighbor, Miss Benny. And then just young kids down there in Jasper before the internet. All right, before you can listen to this, way before dial-up, Scott.
Wow. Oh, my God.
Miss Benny would take us sightseeing. She'd just say, let's get in the car. And I said, where are we going? I said, we're going sightseeing. We just take a big old lap and land at a little pond that was right down the street. That's how AP is when you ask him a question about something specific. He going to talk you all the way around the piney trees and all the way around the lake just to land down the street. Look, right. They're going to take the best possible player that's there. He definitely did a great job leaving it wide open. And then you mentioned all that. I went over to FanDuel. I said, let me see what FanDuel has. And they actually have up to pick number 6. You can have picks and plays of who's going to be drafted. So if you think you got this thing pegged for the top 6 picks, you can go and make some plays for it, which is pretty cool. Odds on favorite right now for number 2 is Arvell Reese. Favorite for number 3 is David Bailey. And Jeremiyah Love is right there as a favorite for number 4. Sonny Styles at 5. And then Carnell Tate at 6. So if everything hits like this, if everything plays out by the favorites on FanDuel.com, it would look like, and it's just making me do
Caleb Downs.
Well, and then Ruben Bain is a name that wasn't named. So you would be looking at a Ruben Bain, Francis Mauigoa, Caleb Downs. Those guys are going to be there. It's going to be interesting to see. Play it over there on FanDuel if you'd like to, folks. They got it covered for all the stuff in the draft.
So I did see a little bit more of Adam Peters from I guess it was this morning on Up and Adams with Kay Adams on the Yahoo show that she does. And he did say, talking about Sonny Styles, he was very complimentary, Sonny Styles, and really just all the Ohio State guys. So he did say he thought they had 4 guys that would go in the top 10. Obviously, Reese being the first. He didn't give the order, but this is, obviously we're just talking about here. And then Styles, Downs and Tate, are going to be in there somewhere or another. But I mean, you saw how well attended that Ohio State Pro Day was, not surprisingly. I mean, that is a group that's really good. Let me ask you this. I don't think we've talked about this angle on Carnell Tate, because this is what we do this time. We get really nitpicky with players. Like all year we enjoy watching them. We talk about how they're good or what they're really good at. And then we find reasons not to like them, when you get closer to the draft.
Absolutely.
So the knock on Carnell Tate, of course, besides the 40 time will be, well, he was never a number 1 receiver, right? He's the number 2 receiver there. They've got a clear number 1 in Jeremiah Smith, who's not eligible for this year's draft. And that helped Carnell Tate's life open. Now, you could also say, well, if he came here to Washington, he's not going to be the number 1 receiver either. So what are we arguing about? But what are your thoughts on that? Does that do anything, move the needle for you at all when you hear people bring that up about Carnell Tate?
Carnell Tate, all of that stuff is true. The biggest one that scares me, I say scares, but I don't scare easy, except haunted houses and snakes and spiders.
Yeah, snakes, man. Yeah, especially in Texas. You better be scared of snakes in Texas.
Man, I don't care what it is. Garden snake, don't matter. They all the same to me.
Exactly.
The main thing that scares me with Carnell Tate is that 40. And I say it scares me. It's just because right now you get, when you run a 40, 4.51 is a 4.5 is a 4.5 is a 4.5.
Sure.
4.59 is a 4.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now 4.49 is a 4.4. 4.47 is a 4.4.
Right.
4.4. And you know what I mean? There's something about it, just knowing that there's that tech faster. But he's had production, and one thing that he really gets to benefit from is the fact that he's been at pretty much an arguably wide receiver U. Brian Hartline, now head coach down there at USF, he has done a great job of grooming some of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, it's all there. You saw JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Terry McLaurin crossed over at that time frame a little bit.
Right.
You had
Terry, by the way, was like a 3rd receiver there and a special teams guy. Remember the Commanders picked Terry. They said, well, he's going to really help us on special teams. Think about that. And it took like 2 days in the camp where Jake Gruden's like, he's not playing any special teams at all. He's one of my top receivers immediately.
Yeah. Like, he's over here. I tell you what, that's a bad thing too. You don't want to have that type of situation. Like, damn, I thought we just had a kick returner. He's our best player. That's how you got Brock Purdy. I mean, look, Emeka Ibuka had a hell of a starting season. Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, he comes from a pedigree, a high-level pedigree. And this particular article on Sporting News has Terry as the 3rd best Ohio State receiver in the league, behind JSN and behind Garrett Wilson. He comes from a pedigree of great receivers.
Right.
And that right there in and of itself would lead me to believe he's going to do well. He's going to play well. He's going to be able to benefit from that. How explosive is he going to be? I don't know. You know what I mean? Ohio State offenses always scare me because of the fact that people are generally running wide the hell open. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
well, he made some great in traffic catches. I mean, he's really got that reach and goes as as they say, can high point the ball, being a 6'3" guy. But I saw him in high school, man, and I say high school, and I should put it in air quotes because he was playing at IMG Academy, and IMG Academy is not like really high school football, but they're playing St. Francis, which is also not really like high school football. Baltimore, these academies, it's a different level of high school. It isn't like your local high school, where, hey, this kid just moved to our district. It's so awesome. Yeah, I mean, they're recruiting from national places. Anyway, he's from Chicago. But I just remember watching him, and they played at University of Maryland, and it was ironically the Friday before Maryland was going to play Ohio State the next day at home, and he was already committed to Ohio State at that point. And I'm watching him, I'm like, dude, the way this guy runs routes and after the catch and just so, it wasn't like the ball just sticks to his hands. I was like, this guy, he could go right now. And it was looking, and he didn't exactly blow it up immediately at Ohio State. He was good, but he was buried, like we were talking about all the receivers. He was buried in the depth chart. And obviously Smith's got a lot of the attention going into last season, and he ends up having a really, really big year to the point where he's, earned himself up into this top 10. So I'm with you. I think sometimes it's a little bit, maybe like the 4-4 versus, a 4-5-1, versus a 4-4-9 or whatever it would have been. Like, what's it? Come on. What are we talking about? Nobody knows Jerry Rice's official 40 time, by the way, to this day. Nobody knows it. And if they do, I'd love to know what it was, because it doesn't matter, because he didn't catch kickoff from behind.
Yeah,
dude was a bad man.
And he's the GOAT. And he's one of,
Exactly.
if not the, argue, you name it, whoever you want to fight it from. But
Exactly.
he's the GOAT, man. But Scott, let's get up out of here, man.
Yo, buddy.
We have had a hell of an episode. Glad to have you back on this side.
Thank you.
Safe and sound up there in VA Beach. Just covering this Commander stuff, man. 1 month away, less than a month away from the draft.
Exciting. Exciting times.
Yeah, exciting times. Who's going to be the newest addition to this team? We're going to find out. We're going to follow it all over here on Believe in Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel and ZipRecruiter on the Believe Network. Make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe, all those things. Talk to you later. Be good.